Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this very, very, very special evening. I'm Seema Kumar. I am the Chief Executive Officer of Cure, and it's a pleasure to actually welcome you. I see so many familiar faces in the audience, but I also see many, many, many new ones and new visitors to Cure. So I'll spend a second or two talking about Cure. Cure is actually an innovation campus. This beautiful building houses world-class laboratories, wet labs, dry labs, a medical device incubator being built as a lab of the future. There's drug discovery and development going on. We're looking at AI and how to improve human health using AI for good, and so much more. But we also are an education center, an event space, a convener, bringing together the best and the brightest and people, all over to this space to talk about topics that are important and top of mind for people. And top of mind for this month, of course, this being Mental Health Awareness Month, May, we wanted to focus this CureX on mental health. Our minds are ailing. What can be done now? So today we have a special experience for you. We're combining the latest advances in science and updates about that and medical practice, to music and how it can soothe the soul, to art. And Jeff Spar, my good friend and colleague for a long time, is going to be capturing all of this in that mural over there, and just watch that as we go along this evening. And Jeff will come up here and talk a little bit about his own struggles with mental health and how he uses art as therapy. We're going to hear some phenomenal performances. We're going to hear from great speakers. We're also going to talk about mindfulness and meditation and psychedelic medicine and so much more. So it's a evening full of a lot of information, but it's also something to engage us in a conversation about a topic that, face it or it impacts every single one of us. So with that, I am going to first invite up David Nathan. And David Nathan is co-founder of Happy Jack and Happy Jack Records. And you have your own story to tell regarding mental health and how this actually ended up in you starting Happy Jack Records. You worked with very, very, very famous artists, to name a few. Just shall we do a little name dropping?
You can. Well, one of them has a few shows in MetLife this weekend.
Okay, yes.
Taylor,
so Taylor
Swift, Ariana Grande, The Weeknd, Jonas Brothers, Florida Georgia Line.
Yeah.
Amy Winehouse.
Yeah, love.
Prince.
And we can go on all
John.
evening. So I'm going to stop you for a second now.
It's all in my speech.
It's all in your speech anyway. But really what I want to talk to you about is, yes, celebrities, we see them from afar and they look wonderful and happy, but there is a lot of mental health issues there too that we need to talk about. But you are here to talk about actually Happy Jack Records and how it looks at, it is a new non-for-profit institution that you founded to really help artists and also not only help them, but new and emerging artists, but also with their mental health issues. So we want to learn a lot more about it, so I'll get off the stage and turn it over to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Of course. I needed a podium, and I don't have one. So I apologize. That's okay. So if you guys will indulge me for a minute, I'm just going to, I have a speech. I'll read parts of it. I'll probably embellish a little bit out of this. But first and foremost, thank you, Seema. And my good friend Lauren for having us here, having me here today, having my great friend Nick Howard here, who you'll be privileged to hear some music from in about 8 minutes, okay? 35 years ago, with no kids, a wife or a worry, I embarked on a journey that would bring me from Connecticut to Boston and ultimately New York City. Officially starting the music business after graduation from Northeastern University, rising up the ranks in business over the years. I'm a well-known and respected veteran in the entertainment and music industry. I'm responsible, one way or another, as we just talked about, for the careers of some of the biggest artists in the world, such as Taylor Swift, who's doing 3 sold-out shows this weekend at MetLife Stadium. And yes, I will be there for one of them, but as a paying patron, not as a guest, so, which is kind of annoying, but it is what it is. Amy Winehouse, Ariana Grande, Florida Georgia Line, The Weeknd, Enrique Iglesias, Thomas Rhett, Elton John, Prince, just to name a few. But let's take a step back. I started promoting clubs and bars across Boston in college and used my personality, my connections, and networking skills to start building my career. When I moved to New York, my first 2 years were spent at Columbia Records as an assistant in the promotion department. After 2 years, I remember my boss telling me that if you're an assistant for more than 2 years, you suck. And then he told me to go watch Swimming with Sharks. So if anybody has ever seen that movie, that's basically what I walked into. I decided after less than 2 years to leave Columbia Records because I didn't suck. And I was hired as the 7th employee at a new startup record company under the title of Universal Music Group. I ended up spending 21 years there, rising through the ranks to Executive Vice President of Promotion and Artist Development. It was an intricate piece of building Republic Records into the #1 record label in the world for 6 straight years. The onset of 2018, and here comes more stress and anxiety. Now divorced with an 18-year-old son, 15-year-old daughter, alimony, child support, mortgage, and more, I left Republic Records, and how smart am I? I started my own company. D&D Endeavors, a talent management and consulting company dedicated to seeing clients in their careers expand on all points of their evolution. Currently, I manage 2 artists, consult a few more, have agreements with a bunch of record labels, a leading digital collectible company that I consult, and an online music education business, providing a unique approach to talent management and consulting that can bring record contracts, brand endorsements, social media, movies, book deals, TV shows, and high-profile engagements to my clients. Full of stress every day. Fast forward to 2020. In June of 2020, at the age of almost 20, and after a sophomore year was cut short due to COVID at the University of Denver, my son Jack sent out a blast email. It's Jack Nathan. If you're getting this message, you've been part of my life, it read. Over the past few years, I've been building a clothing company and art company surrounding my struggles with mental illness. It would mean the world to me if you checked it out and helped support me. The text was most of his friends' formal introduction to the brand, Happy Jack. Jack began crafting sweatshirts in his dorm room in college as a hobby in November, but it quickly turned into his passion project, and in June of 2020, he officially launched Happy Jack. His focus was to create a community for the misunderstood. He was the voice for people who didn't have one and were afraid to use it. When he launched his company, his first $1,000 that he made was donated to Child Mind Institute. On July 3rd, 1 month after he launched his company at the age of 19, in almost 11 months, Jack died suddenly due to a fentanyl poisoning. My family and his friends have been continuing with his brand, mission, and message. And since then, we have donated over $160,000 to different charities and foundations and have grown Jack's business into a leader in the mental health support space. May 2023. For almost 3 years now, I've been struggling with mental health issues, as you can see right now. Anxiety, sadness, anger, fear, depression, failure to grasp the situation that I was thrown into, yet still knowing that my purpose is to live. Living for my wife, my daughter, my stepson, myself, and to memorialize my Happy Jack. I want to move forward. I'm determined to move forward, and will succeed in the challenges ahead with the businesses and the foundations that I continue to run. The disaster that I suffered, how every day since and moving forward, I will forever miss Jack, and celebrate him stays with me and fuels me. With Jack's unknown assistance, his mom and I were able to take on the challenges and continue his mission and message, which is if you can help one person, you've made a difference. If you help 10 people, you've created change. And if you help more than that, you've created a movement. Well, Jack created a movement. Now, you guys, there's people in this room, they don't know me. Most of you never met me before. You've seen me on an invitation. That's about it. It's why I'm excited and honored to be here tonight. To be able to grow, move as a person, a father, a husband, a son, a brother, a stepfather, and a friend is what I'm determined to do. I need to develop the Happy Jack brand with an obligation to help, which is so exciting and energizing. Both Happy Jack and Happy Jack Records are both my son. Jack created this community as a safe haven for kids who struggle with mental illness. In turn, he helped himself. He eased his anxiety by his art, painting, making music, creating fashion. He was a survivor, never a victim. He struggled, yes, but he persevered. So what is it that I ask of all of our partners, my artists that we're going to sign to the record label, and my friends, and everybody in this room tonight? For Jack, for us, and the millions who wrestle with mental illness, is to persevere. When I was introduced to my now partner, Sam, who's over here, we spoke for a while, and it became quite apparent that there was something amazing brewing. We began to flush out everything and came up with the industry-changing concept that really is so simple. Something that helps artists, a mental health record label. Happy Jack Records is going to be the first record label of its kind with a focus on breaking and developing artists who suffer with mental health issues. It will be a label that puts its artists, their talents, and their overall wellness at the forefront. It will be a label that, with a 365-degree approach to artist stewardship, Happy Jack Records will reframe the industry, changing both the perspective and the narrative of mental health. So let's for a second equate Happy Jack Records to an iceberg. The only part that one sees sticking out of the iceberg is the tip. That's the competition. Those are the naysayers. Those are the people that will sit here and say you can't do it. And they're always out there. In every business, at every place you turn. But who is out there paying attention? Now, an iceberg underneath the waterline, however, is massive. Bigger than anything you can think of, and that's where the stability is. That's mental health, and that's what people don't see. Most of the time, no one addresses what's below the surface because they don't want to talk about it. I was invited here tonight because I do want to talk about it. I've been in this industry for over 35 years. I've been in thousands of meetings with executives and artists, and their well-being has never once been addressed. Sorry to say it, but it's the truth. People are afraid to address it. Will it affect our profitability? Will it affect our image? Will it affect our partnerships, our strategic alliances? Well, we're going to make sure at Happy Jack Records that that doesn't happen, and that the answer to that is a stern no. The artists signed to Happy Jack will have the ability to do what they do best: write, record, perform. We'll focus on removing the craziness that clouds the mind. Through our 501c3 foundation arm, we will, if needed, supply food, travel, lodging stipends, studio, and mandatory therapy sessions each week so that every artist will be able to focus on what they do great. I told Seema and Lauren a few days ago that I don't like to quote stats or discuss facts and figures because I'm real. My story is real. My struggle and grief are real. And the conversation that I have with people is real. However, I would be remiss if I didn't give you at least a little bit of stats, which I'm sure all of you in this room know. 1 in 5 Americans suffer from mental illness. 1 in 5? No way. 5 out of 5. 6 in 10 people with mental illness get no treatment or medication. Anxiety disorders are the highest reported mental health issue in the United States, affecting more than 42.5 million Americans. Women experience depression at roughly twice the rate of men. And more than 5.5 million children in the United States are diagnosed with anxiety alone. Over 75 million Americans suffer from depression, anxiety, or addiction. Now, these stats that I just mentioned mean that pretty much everyone in this room, one way or another, is struggling with some type of mental health issue. What we need to work on is the recovery and the change. Help is available, and yet, as a society, we often think about mental health differently. Well, Happy Jack Records will do just that. Focus on the recovery, the change, and the support. I was talking to a friend of mine about launching the record company, and they asked me a question that sparked a real interesting discussion. How many artists have you worked with in your career that you think suffer from some type of mental health issue? Now, I sat and I thought about that, and is it 5, is it 10? And as I really dug deep and thought about it, the answer was everyone. How many of them have died from mental illness? My answer? Probably 5 or 6. My point? And in my career, I've been face to face with mental health issues with over 100 artists at different times in my career. But from performance anxiety to drug-induced performances, to alcohol poisoning, depression, suicidal tendencies, and in some cases, I actually had the opportunity to say something and probably didn't. For whatever reason, I chose to remain silent at the moment and didn't step in. And if I did, maybe, just maybe, I could have helped. Happy Jack Records will step in. Our main focus is to make sure our artists have every opportunity to seek help and make change. I want to thank Seema and my longtime friend Lauren Rotolo, who constantly see the future in such a bright way. They're making great strides in so many different categories that how can it not be exciting to work with them? Cure is where people are brought together. This building, its infrastructure, is creating the support anyone needs, all under one roof. And it will help take scientific solutions from concept to reality. I truly look forward to spending more time in this building with all of these amazing people. Now, I've seen a great change in me, and one of the things that I attribute it to is therapy. So with your help, we can make therapy cool again and continue to change the narrative and the stigma attached to mental health. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. So, the pandemic. The pandemic actually, I think, made everybody realize that mental health is actually not, over there. It's within all of us.
Yeah.
We all have different levels of, mental health issues, but also like to have mental health well-being. So why do you think that there continues to be stigma around it? And, artists, famous artists don't talk about it, but also record labels don't typically talk about it because, of the stigma.
Yeah.
But also profitability, as you said. How can you change them as well?
Well, I think that's the plan with what we're going to do is we're going to be a record label that's going to change the way people look at mental health. And we're signing artists that want to make a difference. We're signing artists that want to get up on a stage and speak about it. And there's requirements, right? You have to go to therapy. You have to be able to want to help your communities, your artists, your peers, your fans, yourself. And I think that's where it starts. If you don't have the ability to recognize that you have something that doesn't work right, and you don't want to fix it, there's the problem. And what I'm seeing now, and to be honest with you, I see a lot of artists that are starting to really come out and start talking about it now. And unfortunately, you're seeing a lot of deaths, and you're seeing a lot of suicides by these artists, and drug overdoses, and all these different kinds of things, which is absolutely horrible in any way.
Yes.
But when it's obviously when you're in the music industry or you're a celebrity or an athlete or something, it shines a much brighter light on it. Look, I'm not trying to change the world. We're just trying to do right with the artists that we sign and send a message, quite frankly, to all the record companies that it's important. And your artist's well-being, if they're not good,
Yes.
you don't have anything.
Yeah.
Like, to me, I watched it. I was the only, there were 2 people in the entire country at our record label that talked to Amy Winehouse. Oh. I was on the ground, and then there was our chairman.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
And I could sit here and tell stories of moments that I could have stepped in, and there were celebrities in the room, and there were other people in there, and it just wasn't the right space for me. Again, now, if I did,
Yeah.
I think Amy is a little bit, I think she was
Yeah. Yeah.
I think she was too far to help. But
Yeah.
but there are other artists, and again, for me and what my partner Sam are going to do, who's here tonight, is we're going to start from the bottom.
Absolutely. And you know, like you said, even changing one person's life.
Yep.
So, and by the way, I would contradict you. You are changing the world. So thank you for doing that. Really appreciate that. Yes.
One
You
day
are
at a time,
changing
right?
one day at a time.
One day at a time.
One day at a time.
Yes.
And then we'll talk a little bit later about this this cool T-shirt, right? You're making therapy cool again,
Yeah, it's
right?
over there if you
it's
guys
over
haven't get it,
there
but
if you guys want to, you know,
we got a
check
bunch
it out.
of different things that are coming, but
Yeah.
We're excited about it. And,
That's great.
And what Happy Jack is doing, totally separate, but you know, that's the art and the fashion side of it, and that's my son's business, and that will always remain, and that's my passion.
That's
and
great.
It's beautiful for me to be able to take the two things that I really know the best and put them together.
Wonderful.
So.
And speaking of two things,
Yeah.
one of them is music.
Yep.
So we can't have a conversation about music without listening to music and to an incredible voice.
Yep.
Right? Do you want to introduce him,
Sure.
or shall I?
No,
Or
I can do it. Or you can do
He's
it. I
a
don't care. I've done it a bunch of times, so I know.
and
Yeah.
songwriter,
Yeah.
right? His name is Nick Howard, British singer and songwriter. Has played in more than 1,000 shows, right? 6 albums in how many continents? 6 continents, whatever, you know? All the good ones, okay. All the good. And he has, of course, a wonderful British accent. But he also learned German in 2 months and competed in The Voice, the German edition.
And won.
Right.
Somehow.
And so with that,
So there is a
come on
celebrity
up.
among us.
There
right?
is,
Yeah,
there
there
is a celebrity among us.
Yes.
Please
Very
come on
kind,
up,
yes,
Nick.
Absolutely. You're ready for
So I've been working with Nick for quite a long time, and he's not only an incredible musician, but a very good friend of mine. And when Lauren came to me and said we need an artist to perform, he was the first one that came to my mind because of the music that he writes, the stories that he tells. You know, when you're an artist and you write, you're able to put down your thoughts and your feelings on paper, and he does that absolutely beautifully. And so I am excited to introduce Nick Howard, but more excited to call him my friend. So thank you for being here, and thank you, Nick Howard, everybody. Thank you very much.
I promise. There we go. I'm sorry Taylor Swift couldn't make it. You have to deal with me, but she's quite busy at the moment. I'm so very, very happy to be here. Anytime I get to come to New York, I called this city home for about 12 years of my life, and so it really feels. I just feel very at home. I'm so fortunate to be here and be part of such a wonderful event with somebody who I love and admire and respect so much. And there are so many thoughts going through my head as I hear David speak about his experience, and I won't be able to articulate all the thoughts I have, so I apologize. You'll have to bear with me a little bit. But I was just thinking about something that always comes into my mind when I think about David. And we met about 5 years ago now. I had a song that we're going to play you in a second called Our Time, and it was getting some traction here in the US. And David came on the project, and we did a lot of radio promo. We were driving around, and radio promo is possibly the most boring part of what we do as artists. A lot of driving, a lot of time spent in vehicles getting to know somebody, and I got a chance to know him like really well through that. And the thing that sticks out, as I was quite a new father myself at the time, whenever one of his kids would call, it didn't matter where we were. We could have been walking into the most important meeting. That was the priority. And I remember saying to my wife, I was like, this is a good person whose family comes before all else. And that is why he's such a lovely person to work with, is because he's a good person. And that always comes to my mind when I think about you. And so I'm just proud to be a friend, and grateful that you asked me to come and play. And this is Rebecca Haviland. She's going to make me sound better today. A wonderful artist too, but she's kindly lending her talents to me. This is a song called Our Time. I wrote it a few years ago. Music is therapy for me, like it is for so many people, either listening to it as a fan or writing songs. You may have noticed there's some tension in the world, and there has been for quite some years now. And so my way of dealing with that is to write a song that encourages people to be better and to see the positives in each other and the similarities. So I wrote this song called Our Time, and we're going to play it for you now. It goes a bit like this. The clock is ticking, the air is so still. I feel your heartbeat and you feel my chills. Waited a lifetime to see the sun. Well, no more waiting, the time has come yet. We sing one, now everybody rise above. And sing two, united with a super love. Sing three, we need to come together now and make a fire, sing a one, two. This is our time, this is the moment. These are our lives, we gotta fight for what we believe, believe in what's right. We are alive, alive, alive. This is our time. Oh, this is our time. Oh, this is our time. Oh, this is our time. Yeah, we sing for the moment. We sing for the pride. We sing for the brothers and sisters we left behind. When we're together, we're 10 foot tall, yeah. We've got to believe there's no impossible. We sing one, now everybody rise above. And sing two, united with a super love. And sing three, we need to come together now and make a fire, sing a one, two. This is our time, this is the moment. These are our lives, so we gotta fight now for what we believe, believe in what's right. We are alive, alive, alive. This is our time. Oh, this is our time. This is our time. Yeah. Oh, this is our time. Oh, yeah, yeah. So everyone in every corner of this beautiful land, doesn't matter where you came from or where you stand. Well, let's raise up every glass and hold them to the sky. We're so high, we're so high. See one, now everybody rise above. And sing two, united with a super love. And sing three, we need to come together now and make a fire, a fire, a fire. Oh, this is our time, this is the moment. These are our lives, so we gotta fight for what we believe, believe in what's right. We are alive, alive, alive. This is our time, this is the moment. And these are our lives, so we gotta fight for what we believe, believe in what's right. We are alive, alive, alive. This is our time. Oh, this is our time. Oh, this is our time. Hey, hey. Oh, this is our time. Thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, as Afa mentioned, I was did the voice. Life is crazy, and what I like about the music and pursuing art is that it takes you on adventures that you otherwise may never have gone on, and it brought me to this country. It's given me so many of the best experiences in my life, and at some point I started spending a lot of time over in Europe opening for bigger bands and things like that, built a fan base, then was asked to be on the show The Voice, and I was like, yeah, of course, I would love to be on the show. And they were like, you have to learn German. And I was like, okay, I'm a desperate musician, I'll do anything, sure. And if you ever get a chance to watch the clip of my blind audition, you can definitely see I'm more nervous to speak to the judges afterwards. Like, the singing was no problem, but I was like, please don't ask me any questions. So I'm convinced that I won because people felt sorry for me. That's my thought. But I had the opportunity to sing a song which in the blind audition, if you're familiar with the show, by Jason Mraz, who's a musical sort of guy I absolutely love, and had a chance to do this song. It was a really particularly great time in my life because my parents were still alive. I lost them about 6 years ago now. No, 8 years ago now. That's wild. Within 6 months of each other. So it was a very difficult period in my life. But one thing I look back on this time very fondly is that my mom, who was sick, was able to come and be at these shows and would fly over and get there however she could from the UK to Germany. And I can sort of picture her as a CEU sitting in the front row with the sort of most, the proudest smile. And I was so glad that she got to experience, that with me, having been the first person to tell me to pursue music and follow my dreams and all these things. So it was very special. And the song I sang was called I Won't Give Up, and it goes a bit like this. When I look into your eyes, yes, I watch in the night sky, or a beautiful sunrise. There's so much they hold, and just like them old stars, I see that you've come so far to be right where you are. How old is your soul? And I won't give up on us, even if the skies get rough. I'm giving you all my love. I'm still looking up, and when you're needing your space to do some navigating, I'll be here patiently waiting to see what you find. 'Cause even the stars, they burn, and some even fall to the earth. But we got a lot to, but God knows we're worth it, and I won't give up. Yeah. I don't wanna be someone who walks away so easily. I'm here to stay and make the difference that I can make. Our differences, they do a lot to teach us how to use them tools and gifts we got. Yeah, we got a lot at stake. Yeah. And in the end, you're still my friend. At least we didn't intend for us to what we didn't break, we didn't burn. We had to learn how to bend without the world caving in. And I had to learn what I got and what I'm not, and who I am. But I won't give up on us, even if the skies get rough. I'm giving all my love. I'm still looking up, I'm still looking up, 'cause I won't give up on us. Yeah, God knows I'm tough enough, and we got a lot to learn, but God knows we're worth it, and I won't give up. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well,
Wow.
I'm going to go Q&A session now. All right,
Yes.
okay.
Well,
I'm
my
more nervous for
God.
this, yeah.
My God. You know, it was mind-blowing. It was just
Very kind. Thank you.
phenomenal. Phenomenal. No wonder you won. I don't think they felt sorry for you. I think they were just blown away
That's very
by
kind.
your
Thank
voice.
you.
And,
Thank you.
and, you know, it's really wonderful that your mom was like right there in the audience and
very
watching you and feeling proud of you, especially because she inspired you.
Absolutely.
And totally get that. So tell me, what do you think about, you know, where we are today with mental health, and what role can music play in solving, you know, and soothing the soul?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of amazing that it's taken this long for somebody to think of the idea that David's thought of, because they really go so hand in hand. You know, art is such an important medicine when it comes to mental health, and for all of us, I think we rely on music and other art forms to help us get through the ups and downs of life. And music can comfort you in the best of times, and it can be there for you in the worst of times. And so it's such an obvious partnership. And as I said, songwriting for me is a way of figuring out and organizing my thoughts and emotions and things like that. But I'm very much, first and foremost, a fan of music, and it's helped me in my life so much, in the times when I've needed it the most. So I'm super excited for David's venture, and it's such an obvious thing. And it's, artists are often, we go in the blender of the music industry, and we don't always come out the other side looking too good. So yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And so it's nice that somebody has noticed that it might be nice to take care of artists a little bit more, and it's great that that's at the forefront of what they're doing. So just very, very great idea, and I'm super happy to be part of this. And as I said before, a friend of David's.
That's wonderful. Any message you want to send to your fellow artists or others, who are aspiring artists?
Absolutely. It's our industry is designed for you to compare yourself with others, and it's the most toxic thing you can do to yourself, and it's unfair and it's not productive. And everyone falls into this trap. We look at social media, we're constantly comparing ourselves. We feel less than, we feel like we're not achieving what we should be doing, but it's such a negative and draining thought process. So I always encourage artists to firstly follow your own path and not compare yourself. It's difficult to do. Sorry, I'm professional. But it's not always easy. But you have to remind yourself to stay focused on what you're trying to do, and then also just to be patient. And nothing happens. No artist's journey has ever been like this, and we're led to believe that they are because we post the best bits. But the truth is that everybody's journey in life is like this, and so yeah. So my advice to artists is to not compare themselves to others and to just be true to who they are and see where it goes.
Wonderful. What a piece of wisdom.
Oh, thank you very much.
Really appreciate
Not
it.
bad
Thank you
on the
for
spot.
sharing.
Okay.
Not bad on the spot. Not bad. We're going to have you come back up towards the end and
Absolutely.
sing again.
Yeah, as long as people stick around. Don't
Yes,
leave.
the people will
I'll be
stick.
offended.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So one more round of applause. Thank you. Thank you. The Voice, the winner of The Voice. So what I want to do right now is actually switch gears a little bit, and we are going to move from music to medicine, or medical research, I should say. So our next speaker is Dr. Ala Landa. She is the Assistant Professor of Clinical Psychology and Psychiatry at Columbia University Medical Center. And she is a researcher and a clinician, and her work actually bridges clinical psychology and neuroscience, and is focused on the interface of emotion regulation, interpersonal well-being, lifelong development, and health, with the goal of uncovering the etiology of brain-body illnesses. And also, she founded the multidisciplinary Columbia Psychosomatics conferences and other training initiatives aiming to improve novel approaches in healthcare and beyond. So with that, let me welcome up Dr. Landa. Ala, come on up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For the
Thank you for joining us.
introduction.
Over to you.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Wow, this would be so hard to follow this. The music was so beautiful, and I have to follow it with charts and numbers, etc. But I also want to say that music is such an important healing, and actually you'll see that we do use it in our work as well. So thank you for that. Well, it's really a great pleasure to be here. I really appreciate the invitation. And when I heard very recently about this place, I was really at awe, because we really need pulling our forces together and integrating various fields in order to move forward in life sciences, and innovation is in the forefront of it. So I'm really very, very happy to be here. And I also am loving this program that it integrates the science, but very importantly, very personal stories of people who are suffering and are getting help or not getting help. And so I don't see David anymore. I really was moved by David's presentation, and I want to say that it really takes a lot of courage to share something so personal. And I was really moved by the way that he turned real pain into helping others and resilience, not only for himself, but for others. And this is a beautiful thing. So I was, let me just see if it's working. Okay, it is working. So I was asked to come here and give the whole overview of what is happening in mental health care now and in the future, and to do it in 15 minutes. I need to report that something really good about mental health care is that so many things are happening that 15 minutes is not enough, and it's not possible. So what I thought I would do is, first I'm going to tell you what I'm not going to talk about. So I'm not going to talk about multitude of mental health issues and disorders that so many people are suffering with. And I'm also not going to actually spend too much time, and actually it was just mentioned previously, the numbers and what a mental health crisis we have in all over the world, even before pandemic, but now even more. But for example, this Project for Hope came up with the numbers that 25% of global population suffers from mental illness. 2/3 of people with mental health conditions do not receive the care they need. Within US, it's 57%. So I think to the audience in this room, it's already obvious. I'm not going to talk about it. So what I thought I would do today is just share with you some thoughts and ideas of what has been happening kind of recently in the mental health care, and some areas that we really need to move forward. I first called it challenges, then I changed the title to new directions. So I think these are going to be the topics that are right on the sort of crisp. And I'm going to briefly mention them. And then what I'd rather do instead is illustrate those, sharing with you some of the work that we do, some of the research that we do in our lab, so in a more narrow field. So very briefly, first of all, of course, research on the etiology, right, of disorders is really burgeoning, and there is a lot going on, and we now have new techniques, and this is really moving the field forward to come up with new treatments and enhance existing treatments. Translational research is very, very helpful. This is when we really focus to do research linking very, very basic science when we work with cells, etc., and all the way to the clinical research and implementation. There's a lot of new treatments you might hear about. Besides new medications and new psychotherapies, there's brain stimulation, there's ketamine we're going to be talking about later today, et cetera, et cetera. And in research, what I think is we need to do more and more, we're not there yet, but it's, I think, started, is do multi-level, multi-method studies. When in the same study, we do, we measure several things at once. So we have, for example, very psychological variables. We have a look at neural circuits, molecules, et cetera, et cetera. Then the field, I think, is finally changing into a more personalized approach. We're moving from just general what therapy works, what medication works, to what treatment helps what specific patient and at what time point. So in order for us to have this more granular understanding, we need to do research studies that are formulated like this, and we also need to train clinicians to be versed in different kinds of approaches. Then some disorders are just neglected, more neglected than others, and today you'll be hearing about some of them, but my field, I think, is pretty much neglected, and we need to do more research and also make treatments more available. And then the issue of implementation of research, right? Even when we find treatments that are working, how do we really bring it to people? And it's also very challenging, and we need to do it on a healthcare level as well as on the patient level, because many people, we already, I think, started this conversation today, many people actually not open to receiving help for various reasons. A lot of it is stigma that still exists in our society, so we need to do a lot of work there as well. And then integrating mental health with the overall health. This is, I think, another movement that is happening more and more right now. So these points, and I'm going to illustrate with the area that I am in. It's called psychosomatic medicine. As I mentioned, it's quite neglected, so I don't know if many people in the room know exactly what it is. It does have a stigma of meaning that bodily symptoms are sort of not real, all in your head, and this is actually not what it means. What it means is psycho is for the brain, the psychology, the emotions, etc., and somatic is body. So it's the field that basically covers any link between sort of the mental health and the bodily physical health. And within this field, there are also multiple directions, and today I'm going to focus kind of on one. This is the experience of people who have bodily symptoms, chronic pain, GI symptoms, neurologic symptoms, and this is a tendency to experience these bodily symptoms in response to psychosocial stress. And in these cases, oftentimes disease or injury causing the symptom cannot be identified. It's highly prevalent. Some studies estimate up to 25% of visits to all primary care clinics have these issues. People call this multiple different names, from medical unexplained symptoms, somatization, et cetera, and it's changing because of the stigma, because every new term becomes stigmatized, unfortunately. And these people linger between medicine and psychiatry, and unfortunately in most of the world, with the exception of some countries, we're really not treating these symptoms well. And this leads to very ineffective use of healthcare, as you can imagine, as well, and we need to do more research on this. So if I were to summarize to you what my lab is doing with one slide, I would show this cartoon. I don't know if you can read. It says, "Good news, the test results show," it's a metaphor that the physician is saying. So basically my task is to figure out everything that's wrong with this slide. And how do we do this? We do translational research. And now, with advances in some methods, for example, brain imaging, we do know that the symptoms are real. And this is a very, very important point. So what we do is we implement psychological methods, like we interview patients with depth, we do brain imaging, and I collaborate with others to even do animal model studies, so that together we come up with understanding that informs treatment. In particular, I'm focusing on developmental approach, the role of interpersonal emotions and distress. You already mentioned that. And within this, we study chronic pain because it's one of the most common symptoms. As you know, there is a chronic pain epidemic in this country. And I'm not saying all chronic pain is caused by this, but many, many patients with chronic pain, the pain is actually caused by the brain. And it brings tremendous suffering to patients, as well as physicians who feel actually very helpless because they don't know how to help these people. I'm also not going to be talking about this complex model. This is just to acknowledge that there are many etiologic factors that we're studying in the field. My lab is only focusing on one direction. And specifically, we focused on developmental approach. And we came up with developmental theory of the somatic symptoms. What did we do? First, we asked, what do we already know? And we put together science from clinical research, genetics, epigenetics, psychoneuroimmunology studies, animal models, social cognitive affective neuroscience. And when we reviewed all this literature, we realized that a couple of points come together and go throughout. This is another illustration, right, of translational research. So the notion was that pain and interpersonal distress apparently share neural circuits, neurotransmitters, genes, and immune markers. And a lot of patients with these issues actually tend to have history of early interpersonal stress or trauma, and they have difficulty expressing emotions to others, and they have high interpersonal sensitivity. So based on this, we formulated this developmental theory of somatoform pain. So the essence of this idea is when we are born, when babies, they do experience distress on a very bodily level. And it is inherently in the interpersonal connection with caregivers that the ability for higher order emotional expression and regulation develops. And if something goes wrong with this process, then the person may be left with still experiencing distress on a bodily somatic level versus experiencing distress as emotions, right, as being sad or angry, etc. So we formulated this theory that takes into account multi-generational transmission of trauma and some genetic predisposition. And there is, I can't point here, but there is basically cascade of events that happen with continuous distress and being overwhelmed. They can predispose the person to having the symptoms later on in life. So what do we do then with this theory? We do some studies to see if this theory, right, we can see it in real life. So I'm going to show you examples of 3 studies very briefly. In one study, we interviewed patients with this chronic bodily distress, specifically pain, and we hypothesized that on the top you see unmet need for closeness with others, right? wanting to be others, but feeling not being able to close to them and not having others. So it was prevalent in this small study, is what evident in 90% of patients express that, versus only 10% of healthy controls. And interpersonal trauma was actually associated with having this diagnosis. So then we went into the brain imaging environment, and we wanted to look at the interaction of interpersonal distress and physical pain. Sorry. And so what we did in the scanner, we exposed people to feelings of social rejection. It's going to be really mean what I'm going to show you that we're doing with participants, but this is for understanding, right? So participant is told that they'll be playing a ball tossing game with 2 other participants represented by these cartoon figures. On the bottom you see the hand of the participant, and first they're all throwing ball to each other. Then at some point 2 others start playing between themselves, excluding the participant. And what we do is during acceptance and rejection, we administer thermal, they're not really painful, but thermal stimulus to the arm. And then we see the difference, right? We compare acceptance and rejection, and we look at the interaction. And we see that actually brain is processing pain in a completely different way when it is in the context of rejection. And also it was about perceiving rejection that correlated with this brain signature, and measures of parental control and care really correlated with this phenomenon. I'm realizing this timer is the time I've left or the time that's left. Oh my God, okay. Very briefly. Very briefly. So in another study we did with a colleague who is studying effects of maternal care on pain sensitivity in an animal model, we were able to show, she basically observes rats and their mothering style, and we were able to show that the care that this mothers rats give to their pups does affect the pain sensitivity of pups. What are the implications of treatment of this kind of sweeping review of what we're doing? Well, interpersonal emotions regulate pain on neural level, right? This is a finding that can be implemented. Early and lifelong development matters. Focus on development of emotion regulation capacity, in particular interpersonal context, is important. And we do have certain psychotherapies that focus this, right? So it points us to a specific treatment. It also points us to using multimodal treatments. So when the child is developing, going back to the developmental model, all variety of our faculties are involved: emotions, language, sensory, cognition, etc., etc. And so they're all interconnected, and this is how the brain is developing. This is a picture of connectome of all the brain regions, and each behavior experience engages in multiple components, which are in turn supported by multiple brain regions. So this points to real importance of multimodal treatments that increase neuroplasticity. So we can engage physical therapy, mind-body treatments, movement, exercise, art, music, dance therapies are extremely important for these conditions and many others, but particularly these ones. I'm going to flip through this. There's studies already showing that this, for example, mind-body intervention and mindfulness affect pain regions. And this is just an example of one study we're doing now with patients with lung disease, newly diagnosed lung disease. When we integrate MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction group, with individual counseling to help patients with newly diagnosed lung disorder deal with the emotional distress from having the disorder. So these are kind of for illustration of the first 3 areas, and I'm going to just briefly mention about implementation of this approach, right? And what do we do towards that? This is going to come from this chapter that we did on integrating behavioral health and primary care. There is a big direction happening, like a BIMCO movement happening, and particular applicable to these patients with bodily symptoms. So how do we engage patients in this approach? How do we move, right, from this understanding to real treatment? It's challenging because currently, among most people, this is the understanding, right? If you can read, he said it was psychosomatic, so I gave him imaginary check. So what do we do? What we need to do is completely abandon mind-body dualism. And biopsychosocial approach, I don't know if people in this room are familiar with this term, we really need to implement this. This approach was formulated by Ailing in the 70s. The idea is that you can consider any phenomena at multiple levels, from molecules, organs, sorry, I know this is very small, to organs, nervous system, person, family, et cetera, and all of these levels are important. And what it means is that anything that is psychological is biological at the same time, and anything that's biological is psychological at the same time. Briefly want to show you one study, not my study, but I thought it was very good to illustrate that how we experience emotions in the body. People were just asking to draw where they feel emotion, and it is in the body. So what we need to do to abandon this mind-body dualism, we need to do it on person level, healthcare level, right? How healthcare is organized, and societal level. So what do we do towards that? So we're also trying to change that. This is a huge, as you can imagine, task. So we developed this construct of biopsychosocial awareness. So we're studying how people are perceiving, right, the link between brain and the body. And we have a whole approach with stages of change and ideas how we can move people along stages of this developing of this biopsychosocial awareness. And we can even, not for you to read this, otherwise you would need a lot of music performances after this, but just to see that we are at the stage that we can recommend specific pathways of care for patients depending on where they are in their understanding. And all of this, researchers thought about this, but this is not implemented. We're ready and eager, but this is where we are right now, right? So we don't have this now, but we have this kind of more intellectually. I'm going to finish in a second. Also want to mention that another way to do it is just education, right? So we started, that you mentioned our Columbia Psychosomatics Conference, which is also multidisciplinary. We bring researchers and clinicians from different disciplines and from different countries. And we're also now starting some training initiatives for physicians to educate them in these approaches as well. So all of these tasks cannot be done separately. We all need pulling our forces together, and I feel CURE is doing exactly this. So I really want to congratulate you to starting this initiative and this building, and thank you very much for having me.
So this is fascinating. We have to have you back again for like a full hour lecture, because we've all heard this expression, especially when it comes to women, right? In the old ages, but even in present day, it's all in your head. And it's not. It's not. It's in your body, right? That's one thing. The other thing is, when somebody rejects you, when somebody breaks your heart, you say, you don't say you say I'm heartbroken, because you actually feel your heart breaking. It's not psychosomatic, but there is a real physicality to it. And so I think what you said, and which is really appropriate to the program that we're bringing you today, is all about it's everything: music, art, food, society, mindfulness, meditation, medicines, everything all together. And so thank you for the great research you're doing. And I just saw that diagram of the brain, that whole thing you showed, and I'm just thinking, okay, AI. So we'll have to talk more about that when you come back. Thank you so much.
Thank you
really
very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We can leave it. So we're now going to have another speaker come up, and really honored to have him here as well. That's Dr. Jorge Petit, likes to go by George. And so he is a public sector psychiatrist and executive healthcare leader. He's a community psychiatrist, and he is leading the sector to innovate and transform healthcare for those most in need and those most vulnerable. These are people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. They are those struggling with mental health, substance use challenges, individuals in poverty, and people who are facing eviction and homelessness. I pass by, every day on my way to Penn Station, I pass by this homeless shelter, and it is, really heartbreaking to watch. And people who are marginalized, unemployed, or disadvantaged. So thank you for the work you do. Please come on up and give us your talk.
Thank you
you
so much. So thank you, Seema, for putting this together. Thanks, everyone, for being here. It's impossible to follow, David, a song, slides. I don't have any of that. What I do have, though, is I think, this deep-seated commitment and passion for the work that we do and being of service. So I am a psychiatrist. I've been in the public sector, and by that I mean working in low-income communities with those individuals that are disadvantaged, disenfranchised, those that are underserved, marginalized populations that don't have access to services. And it was in my life's mission to find ways to be able to increase access to services that are needed. And it shouldn't necessarily be based on one's zip code that you can get really good services or not. Right? So that's been sort of my mission. So again, thanks for bringing this together. It is a big tent. I do think that within the mental health sector, we do have all these different variants and all these different aspects of the work that we need to be doing. So what I've focused on and what I'm going to talk a little bit about tonight is, how do we really look at this public sector very differently from a healthcare perspective? And I love the idea of integration. I saw one of those slides, that it's really about being able to integrate all those services in one seamless way. This dichotomy between, the brain and the body has got to stop. I think it does cause a lot of the challenges. And some of those are based on how the funding comes. We have, weirdly enough, we have an Institute for Health, but we also have National Institute for Mental Health, and that should not be the case. But anyway, so I'd like to provide a little bit of context. I know a couple of people alluded to stats, and I'm not going to get too deep into it, but I do think it's important for us to ground ourselves in understanding what this is all about and what some of the numbers mean, because I do think that at the end of the day, what I would like folks here to walk away with is an understanding and an ability to be energized by the work that we can all do in trying to resolve some of these issues, because I do think it's important that we ensure equitable care for all. The good news is also that we know what works. This isn't something that we have to invent from scratch. I mean, there might be some research, and I think implementation science is critically important. I would love to have more conversations about how do we take some of those things that are coming out of these academic centers and how do we bring them down into communities that are marginalized. Black and brown communities don't necessarily have access to some of the latest research, or we talk about psychedelics, or we talk about all these other innovative approaches. Kind of hard to come by when you're worried about, are you going to be able to put food on the table? Are you going to be able to make your rent? So I do think that we have to take those things into account. So just a couple of stats. We spend $4 trillion a year in healthcare. Our outcomes suck across the board. Compared to any other industrialized country, our outcomes are not great. And I do feel that a lot of that sort of the disproportionate share of some of those negative outcomes fall on behavioral health. And it's not because we don't know what people need or how they would benefit. It's just that the way the system is structured really, I think, precludes people from being able to access those services. So 1 in 5, I think you mentioned 1 in 5 adults, have a mental health condition. 1 in 20 have a serious mental health condition. This is the deep end of the pool. These are the folks that I think fall through the cracks and need the types of services. And I have two of my coworkers here who've been, in the trenches for the last, 30 plus years, doing that type of work. But they fall through the cracks, and they're the ones that don't have access to services. They're the ones that end up homeless, and not because of issues of themselves, but it's because of the way the system is structured. So those folks that you're seeing in Penn Station, and I think we've seen, this burgeoning, number of folks, is because the society isn't necessarily there to be able to take care of them. More than half of Americans reported that COVID has impacted. And I don't think it's just COVID alone. I think it's isolation. It's the loneliness that came about COVID. It's the fact that we all went remote. Not everyone, but a lot of us, we're isolated at home. And it has a negative impact. And we know that negative impact in the context also of social media and all of the social unrest that we experienced over the last, many years has definitely impacted. And as a parent of 2 teenagers, I have to say, I think that the sequelae of COVID are there. We might not physically see them, but I think psychologically, developmentally, emotionally, it has had an impact. My son started 9th grade in lockdown, did not socialize for a year at that critical age when that's all they needed to be doing is socializing, creating peer relationships, and that didn't happen. So we shall see where all that goes, but I do think that that's really important. And I think that more than half of the people in the United States did not receive care. That number, 57%, I think, was up there. For more than half of individuals in the United States, adults in the United States, did not receive any treatment. And a lot of that is due to the challenges and the barriers. Not for everyone, but think about that working mom in the Bronx who has a difficult time getting, to her appointments or being able to make ends meet or pay the rent, on top of thinking about, I have to go to my therapy appointment. So there are so many different challenges and barriers. People are uninsured or underinsured or have high financial barriers to paying, for their payments. And again, transportation issues, I think, are important as well. Regrettably, stigma still remains one of the biggest challenges. So you're coming up here and telling your story, as painful as that is critically important. We have to talk about this. Mental health exists, or mental health conditions exist. We have to take it out of the shadows. We have to be able to embrace it as a reality. And I think that we have to all come together and tell our stories about how difficult and challenging it is. And we have to, I think, just eliminate this idea that it's stigmatizing or there's some shame involved in this. One person, in the US dies by suicide every 11 minutes. The vast majority of these are preventable because there's usually an underlying mental health condition. So the issue around access is really critical. Just a couple of other things that I find really, frankly, tragic are 3,000 drug overdose deaths every year in New York City. And there's significant disparities by race, by age, and by location, by zip code. We do a lot of work when I was at Services for the Underserved, hotspotting some of those areas that have high rates, of poverty and drug overdose, and trying to create programs that are more localized. So the way that we can think about this is that there's a fatal overdose about every 3 hours in New York City. So at the end of today's, meeting, we're all going to go home. We'd have spent, let's say, 3 hours here. There'll be one fatal overdose death that's happening right now. I mean, that's tragic, and that I think has got to stop. 1 in every 120 New Yorkers is homeless. That's about 70,000 men, women, and children. And again, these are not what we consider that Skid Row, Bowery homeless individual, right? There's about 3,400 of those that are really chronically homeless individuals that require, I think, a different way of thinking about it. But for those 70,000, and I think, Sharon oversees, 11 of our shelters, those individuals are like precariously housed, and it's one paycheck away from being homeless. So it can happen to any one of us in this environment where you end up homeless. And we are a state that's a right to shelter, so you'll get access to, shelter, but the reality is that it shouldn't have to be that way. We have to think about eviction prevention programs and other ways of ensuring that you're not that one paycheck away from being homeless. Because again, when I used to go to the shelters, there were a lot of people that looked just like me who had a bad time with whatever issue. They had a medical emergency, or they had to pay out of pocket for whatever, and they couldn't make that rent, and they end up homeless. So homelessness is a big issue. We've also been inundated with about 70,000 migrants. 70,000, that's duplicate the number of people in our shelter system already. And again, as a right to shelter city, we have to do something about that. It's overwhelming our shelter system in a way that I think we all need to, as a city and as a society, really come together and figure out how are we going to manage, because it is our responsibility, I think, to take care of these individuals that are coming through, but we got to do it in a way that is really meaningful. So my career has really spanned, I think, all of the different sectors, and I very intentionally, when I finished my residency, went into public psychiatry because I thought that's where I could do the most good in terms of the skills that I brought to the table. I worked at a psychiatric emergency room, ran one, in Harlem for many, many years, and saw, this was at the height of the crack epidemic, and saw the significant toll that substance use disorders have on individuals and families. I saw how education or lack of education or stigma impacted people's adherence to treatment, or the length of time, it's on average 10 years between beginnings of symptoms to when you get diagnosed. 10 years goes by. And we know from all the research the impact that has on individuals' brains and socially, and that downward social spiral. So again, we go back to the issue of stigma and really thinking about combating that. But again, the challenges of thinking about the sector and emergency rooms being a source of care is really problematic, because that's not where you should be coming for the first time to get care, right? I work for the City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. I oversaw all of the city's publicly funded programs, which we will never be able to get to tonight, but I would love to talk about how messed up the healthcare system is financed, and how the financing is what drives some of the problems that we see, when you have very, very restricted funding that comes from, the city or the state or the federal government, and, particular ways of doing things that aren't necessarily person-centered, or really responsive to the needs of the individual, is where I think some of the problems, reside. But when I worked at the city, we had under, Bloomberg, and Tom Frieden was our commissioner, very public, health focused. But we had these initiatives that were really geared towards addressing some of these really entrenched problems, whether it was trying to promote depression screening in primary care or looking at medication-assisted treatment for individuals with substance use disorders. I most recently spent some time at Service Civilian Served. It's a very, very large community-based organization whose mission is to work with individuals with developmental disabilities and those that are suffering with mental health and substance use conditions, as well as those that are unstably housed. And I think that there's really a perspective from a community-based organization that we can meet the needs of those individuals in the most person-centered and responsive ways, especially if we are anchored in the community. It's really important for us to think about how do we provide community-based services, because as an individual, if I were, a black man, I would want to be seen and served by an individual that looks like me and understands me from the perspective of where I'm coming from. And I think the big challenge is we have a workforce crisis. Right now, we have a significant workforce shortage and crisis. We had a 30% vacancy rate. We have a 30% turnover rate. How do you keep people engaged in this work that's really, really hard when we're not providing them a living wage? I had people that worked at SUS that were homeless, that were living in our shelters, that were having 2 or 3 jobs to be able to make ends meet. And the way, again, the healthcare system is financed is, I think, problematic, because we don't pay, $15 an hour to be a direct service provider is not sufficient. So all of that, I think, just to provide you context a little bit about how the sector is structured. And I don't want to sort of, only focus on the negative. I think that there are some incredibly, important opportunities ahead, whether it's thinking about how do we marry more the public-private. I think those partnerships are critically important. I do think that there are a number of innovative approaches to some of the work that we need to be doing. And I think by having these conversations, by convening and facilitating some of the conversations from the different sectors, I think we'll be able to push the envelope. But these are some of I wanted to leave you with some of the lessons that I've learned. I think we have to, and I say this knowing that it makes people uncomfortable, we have to address head-on the racial and health inequities that exist in our system of healthcare. It's just there. So thank you. When I say that, I know I'm not popular when I say it, but the reality is those inequities are there. We have to talk about them. We might not be able to solve them overnight, but we have to be able to address the fact that there is a significant inequity in the way our system is structured. I do think that we have to also talk about the fact that our payment systems are inequitable. There is no parity. When you look at the way that we get reimbursed, commercial versus Medicaid versus Medicare, there is a significant disparity. And the plans, we have 18 of them, I think, in the state, the plans don't care about mental health, and they don't pay mental health in the same way that they would pay for primary care for any other services. That has got to change. We have to eliminate all of these barriers, all these things that we talk about, these social determinant of health barriers. They're there. We have to eradicate them. We have to make it easier for people to get to their appointments. And when you think about, let's say, a mom with 3 kids that has to go to her appointment, we will pay her Medicaid. Through Medicaid, we will pay for her transportation, but we won't pay for the kids. So what does she do? Does she leave the kids at home alone, but we don't have daycare, right? So she has to bring them with her. She has to pay the metro fare. And sometimes it's a choice of like, do I go to my appointment? Do I buy my medication? Do I put food on the table? There are significant sort of barriers, right? So housing, access to education and employment, I think, are critical. I think the other big thing that we have to do, and there's certainly, I think, efforts, is align city, state, and federal funding so that really we can be as person-centered as possible, that we can really follow the trajectory of an individual as they're going through their recovery journey, right? I think it's important for us to think about this as it's a journey, right? And not everyone's going to go, in a straight line. There's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be relapses. I mean, the road to recovery is one that I think we need to be able to fund based on the individual's need, not based on the way the state financing or the federal financing is structured. And lastly, I think, I remain incredibly optimistic, right? very cognizant of all the challenges and all the barriers and all the difficulties that people have in accessing services and getting the type of care that they need. But I do think that we know what works. There are a bunch of evidence-based interventions out there. I think it's important for us to be, in the trenches, optimistically moving forward. But I do think that we need to be a bit more focused on solidarity across the board. I think our discourse has gotten very, very polarized, so we don't talk to each other and we don't talk about what's going on. I think that we need to go back to this idea of caring about each other, caring about our neighbor. That individual that we walk by every morning is someone's loved one, someone's brother, someone's uncle, someone's father. And I think we have to think about being way more caring. And lastly, I think we have to approach all the work that we do, at least I do this, or I think about this constantly, with humility. I do think that it is important for us to be humble in our approach to individuals. It's trying to figure out how do we connect with that person that needs the services, and how do we sort of move the system forward in a much more caring manner. So I got 28 seconds left, but I really want to thank you for pulling this together and really allowing us this opportunity to have these conversations. I think that's critical. So thank you.
Thank you so much. A few years ago, I went to San Francisco, and we all went through this immersion process using virtual reality and augmented reality. So we were in this dark room, and we put on a headset, and then all of a sudden, we were turned into people who had to try to make rent, and then we were one by one to not be evicted. We had to give up each thing, and so you had to choose different things to give away. And ultimately ended up homeless, and first in riding the subway back and forth, being in a car, then having to give up the car, and then being on the streets. And so, but the reason I bring that up is that it's not just somebody chooses to be that way, and it happens this way. But there's also, from a mental health perspective, we see a lot of mental health disorders which go unaddressed. And so, first of all, thank you for the work you do. We do have to come back and talk because, it feels like such a huge problem to solve. Do you believe we can solve it, or do you think, it's just, what, $4 trillion you said that we're spending? It feels like a ginormous problem. How do we solve it? Is it solvable?
I have to believe it is. That's been my life's mission for the last 30 years. And again, with 2 teenage kids, I do want to have them understand that it is fixable. It's going to take a lot of effort, and I think we need to remove, that's why I talked about humility, I think we need to remove some of the egos that sort of drive some of the decisions that are out there in terms of what we do, how we do it, how do we fund it, and really look at the recipient of service as the one who really should be calling the shots about what they need, when they need it, where they need it, and how they need it. I think if we can get to that point, the money's there, the science is there that supports these interventions. We just got to figure out how do we cut out all the noise. But I think it is possible.
That's great. Well, on that note, thank you so much for being
so
here,
much.
and thank you for the work you do.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Appreciate
thank you.
it.
Thank you. Okay, so I hope you've all been seeing the development of that blank canvas that now suddenly has a story over there. And the person, the wonderful artist and the wonderful human being who's been doing that is my very good friend, colleague, and ex-partner in all of the work that we did on mental health advocacy is Jeff Spar. He is the founder of Peace Love Foundation, and he has done just some extraordinary work in terms of sharing his story and inspiring others. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about how art, which he knew nothing about, turned into therapy for him. So with that, can I welcome up Jeff?
You can. I'd give her a hug, but I got a lot of wet paint, and she's got
better
the
stay away.
sign, so that would not go really well.
Yeah, yes, that.
A virtual hug. And to be honest with you, I'm so exhausted from painting, I forgot what I was going to talk about.
Yeah, but yeah, tell us your story.
I
Tell
will
us your
tell you
story.
my story.
I
Well,
mean,
the first thing I want to do
Yeah.
is I want to thank you.
Yes.
You know, Seema has been a great champion for mental health long before it became popular and hit the front of everybody's agenda. So she was a visionary and supported it long before anybody believed in it. So I thank you for that.
Thank you. Yes.
So, and I
So
stand.
you were a teenager, you were a rising tennis star, and then all of a sudden something happened. So tell us a little bit about, you know, your life
Yep.
and the turning point,
All right.
and then how art has helped you.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And, you know, I stand here, you know, today living proof of the power of creativity in many ways, right? You've got to see that, not only to change, you know, somebody's life, but to also make a difference in the world. You know, I truly believe that each of us has that opportunity to make a difference. I've been doing this for a while. I think a lot of people maybe don't think they can make a difference. That's not the case. And certainly as I stand up here today in front of a diverse group of multiple disciplines, you know, the promise of being able to make headways on this subject has never been greater. So I thank everybody in the room for that. So what I thought I'd do is share my story. And I share my story is interesting only in that I could be anybody, similar to the cause that, you know, I've dedicated my life to. And, you know, I look out tonight and anywhere that I have the opportunity to do this with full knowledge that this is something that impacts each and every one of us in some way. I mean, it's Mental Health Awareness Month. You know, for people who live it like me, that's kind of a joke because it's every day. Who we kidding? And there isn't anybody out there that this doesn't impact. We just unfortunately we don't live in a world due to the shame and the stigma that so many people have to suffer in silence, and that's not right. That's an injustice, and we got to do better as a society to be able to do that. So with that, picture this, you know, 40 years ago, aging myself, 40 years ago, I'm in Columbus, Ohio, at Ohio State, living out my dream of playing Division I sports, tennis. And meanwhile, my mind is being overtaken by these terrible thoughts that I was powerless to fight, and I had no idea what was going on. You know, I was scared to death, and even worse, you know, I had no one to talk to. You know, I couldn't talk to my teammates. They think I was crazy. I couldn't talk to my coach, probably bench me. Wasn't going to burden my parents with this. How would I even explain that? They worry enough. There were no mental health services in the mid-1980s. So I did what any good Division I athlete would do, right? I sucked it up, and I got worse. And I came home after college, and my health continued to spiral, even though it all looked good on the outside to everybody. And, you know, I remember getting to the point, actually, where I was thinking to myself, this is no way to live your life like this. So I made a decision, and I took the first of what would be an improbable series of chances, which I'll tell you about right now. And the first one was I showed up at a psychiatric hospital, and I was diagnosed with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and I've fought a debilitating illness now for 40 years. I share that with you, not so that you'll feel bad for me. This isn't a pity party. I do it in a joyous way because I'm proud of what I've been able to do. And you know, I have 3 beautiful children, a beautiful wife, and it all looks good on the outside. But you know, mental health issues are invisible, misunderstood, and you can't talk about it. And that's a tough trifecta to go after, and that's why we haven't, you know, made the kind of progress on it. I remember when I was diagnosed, my first reaction was, oh, thank God, I'm not crazy. Whew. My second one was, what do I got to do to get better? And that's where kind of the athlete in me kicked in, because I was always, you know, disappointed. I mean, through exposure therapy and medication, loving family support network, I've had a wonderful life, but I was always disappointed. You know, why can't I do better? Well, that led to the next improbable event. I'm coming home from work one day, And I get a call, and friend calls and says, Jeff, I was reading a blog or something, and I heard that painting might be good for you. He says, have you ever tried it? To be honest with you, I never painted a day in my damn life. But when you're desperate, you know what you'll try? Anything, that's right. So I rerouted, went to the art supply store, and you're looking at the Forrest Gump of painting, right? I never stopped. And it literally, creativity changed the course of my life. It gave me a sense of control that all mental illnesses rob you of. It gave me some peace of mind that I was so desperate for in my life. And it was like I had found a new language, a way to communicate what I couldn't put into words. And I painted paintings like Half Daddy, how I felt when I was with my children, Stop the Madness, and gave people some insight into what I was going through. So, I might not be I love when I follow the doctors and the scientists, because I might not be the smartest guy in the world, but I did realize that, it's good for me. Maybe it'll help somebody else. That's it. So I took a chance. The next thing I did, I showed up at a children's psychiatric unit of a hospital. 2 weeks later, that not only was I, a board member, but I was a patient. And I remember like yesterday walking through the lobby, and I had a bag over my shoulder with supplies, and I'm walking through, and I get onto I literally look like a cross between Santa Claus and a robber. I had absolutely no clue what the heck I was doing, and I got on the unit. I had young children at the time, and I was touched emotionally, and then I panicked, and I realized, holy crap, I have no qualifications to be here. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a social worker, I'm not an art therapist, I'm just a guy. So I went to the plan B. Plan B was I just shared my story with these kids. I tried to inject some hope into a very difficult situation. And, I remember I just challenged these kids to paint what gave them some peace of mind. And, after every one of these sessions, and I wish everybody could go to one of these with me, because I know it would touch you. I'd go to my car, sit in the parking lot, and, I'd cry. And but eventually the tears ended up being tears of realizing that I'd stumbled on something that was part inspirational, part motivational, part you can do it, all kind of wrapped into this message of hope. Sounds like good. So I remember telling one of my friends this revelation, gave me some good advice. He said, well, Jeff, too bad. Why don't you try to clone yourself? Because then you could get it to a lot of people. Well, not a good idea if you ask my wife or my friends or anybody else that knows me. So I took a chance and did the next thing that made sense. I literally showed up at CVS Health at a boardroom, and with a program that our team had designed called Creators, where we would train and equip frontline professionals that were already embedded in all these communities, underserved around the country, whether it be hospitals or behavioral health centers or boys and girls, prison system, and take what we had and bring it to their communities. And guess what? Number one, CVS said, yes, thank God. And then the second thing, it worked. And today, that program, we've got 250 of those creators in 31 states and abroad that are doing life-changing work every single day of the week. We've impacted over 100,000 people. And now in partnership with Amazon and AWS, we are in the process of digitizing not only the workshops, but the experience and what I call the secret sauce. And we'll be coming out with the first web-based digital game for emotional well-being and connection. And with that, the opportunity to truly impact hundreds of millions of people. Because the issue is so big, none of us could possibly take that on. And, you know, as I sit here this evening, you know, I leave you with two things. One is, you know, creativity changed my life. I challenge all you to invite it into your world. You know, it could not only change your life, but it could, you know, help to make a difference in the lives of so many people out there. We truly have a moment in time right now to do something that's epic, that can make the world a better place. So Peace Love is possible because of people like you, and I thank you for that.
Jeff, as always, you know, thank you for sharing your story. Really, really, you know, I'm always
Now will you
amazed.
give me a hug?
Oh, no.
No, I'm just kidding.
I should not have worn white today.
For two people that are as completely aligned philosophically as us, we could not be dressed any different. But anyway.
Yes. No, but, you know, you talked a little bit about, you know, this new thing that you're doing digitally. Because really what you can do is, you know, cloning yourself is one way to go, but the other way to go is to actually use technology, right? So you're using technology to get into schools and into prison systems and into workplaces, because let's face it, you know, we're talking about all of the obvious places, but there is one other obvious place, and that is the workplace. There is a lot of anxiety, stress, and mental health issues. So is that something that you're working on as well?
Yes, and you know, one of the things about our work is, you know, it's needed everywhere. You know, it knows no boundary. Initially, you know, we'll start with the game in the corporate workplace. There's an epidemic of obviously loneliness and all the issues.
The Surgeon General just issued an advisory yesterday, Dr. Vivek Murthy, calling, you know, first of all, loneliness is an epidemic, but also he talked about, you know, social media in today's day and age, the ability to take time away from that constant comparing yourself through social media, and then being in a, you know, ridden with, you know, some other issues. It's important to use technology for good.
I think the world is looking for answers.
Yep.
And, you know, mental health and working on your mental health is not easy work. And, you know, certainly, you know, my formula has always been, I call it the Trojan horse. You know, we get people talking about mental health, they don't know they're talking about it, you know, and I think that, you know, if you can make it fun and approachable and creative, and you can do it in time segments that people, you know, they can get to, I think we truly have an opportunity to open that door so that people can get, you know, the help that they need.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
So,
thank you
well,
for
thank
sharing
you
your
for
story,
your-
and love the glasses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
This.
No painting.
Yes. Okay, so next up, we're going to switch gears one more time, and we're going to get into this very hot topic of psychedelics. And to talk a little bit about psychedelics as medicine is my very good friend and colleague, another long-term friend, David Duncan. David is an award-winning journalist. He writes for, you know, you name it, Vanity Fair, Atlantic, New York Times. We first met when he was writing about the Human Genome Project. And from then on, he's written about 12, 21 books. I can't keep count.
No, not 21.
12.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I can't keep count because
Wow, I
every
would be
time
even more
I
tired.
turn around, you know, you have another book coming. And so you've done, you know, through all of these books and all of the research and the incredible people you've interviewed, you know, you've become an expert in so many different things, including psychedelics. And so
At least
turn
I
it
play
over
one
to
on
you.
television.
You play
Yeah.
one on television, yes, yes. So over to you.
Okay, thank you. So how's everybody doing, by the way? Everybody mentally doing balanced, okay? I mean, this program was incredibly fascinating to put together, and we really appreciate you all coming. I mean, we're also doing kind of an artistic trifecta here. We've got, you know, the music, we've got the art, the visual art, and then now we're going to have some words. So I am going to talk about psychedelics, and I am not even close to an expert on psychedelics, but I have actually experienced them, as you'll see. So we're going to do a little old-fashioned reading, which this is from an article I wrote. But first I want to show you a picture, or a video actually, of an actual person's brain. And this actual person is me. So this is an MRI scan. Let's see if we can go back and just rewrite. Can I make that, do that again? Yeah. Okay, you notice it's really dark in there? And there's little flashes of light. I don't know what all that means. But has anybody had an MRI scan of their brain? Okay, a few people. So it is a very, you can see it's kind of a dark and lonely place, really. I mean, actually looking at it. But there's obviously a lot going on in the brain. And so I thought I would do that as a little introduction. That's me getting the scan. I have actually, as a reporter, experienced a lot of different tests, and including brain stuff. And I'll share this with you. I also wanted to show you what my brain looked like when it was anxious. Okay, so I went into a scan. This is a test. It was actually an anxiety expert, a psychiatrist out at Stanford named James Gross. So he tests people for anxiety. He actually develops therapeutics and then studies fMRI progress of how they're doing. So I got in this thing. They had these little goggles hooked up to a computer, and they showed me a picture of a roaring lion. And if you've ever done this, which I guess most of you haven't, it's pretty, visuals mean a lot. And we actually are designed to run away from lions, or either fight or flight. And so, roar, right there. And that's the actual image that they used. This is what my brain did. Okay, this is, again, just to kind of show you a real person, what goes on. And I didn't have, as it turned out, an anxiety disorder. It was very close, but not quite back then. This was about 15 years ago. And then they showed me a field of daisies. And so my brain settles down, and this is what it looks like. And I won't go into gory detail about all the different regions of the brain here, but this is what's going on in your brains at any given moment, depending on, you might be anxious, you might be calm. And it's kind of fascinating how it actually looks inside the brain. But I'm not here to tell you really about that. I'm here to do something that a science writer, at least this science writer, doesn't normally do. And it makes me slightly nervous to do this. But I had an experience during COVID, which I'm going to read to you about, as a writer, of losing my ability to be able to write. And I write for Vanity Fair, and they were as amazing, because this is your typical Vanity Fair story, but they were kind enough to actually publish this. And it's a very long piece. I'm just going to read you part of it here. And it's called Stolen Words, COVID, Ketamine, and Me. And it's, as you can kind of tell from the title, it has something to do with psychedelics. So here we go. Like I said, an old-fashioned reading. And I'm going to read this to you. And by the way, there is more of it if you want to look at it at Vanity Fair. There's a lot in here that I would be reading for about 30 minutes if I read the whole thing. So I'm going to give you kind of a quick take. And it's interspersed with journal entries. So that's how I start. So one day you realize that you've lost your mind. One day words are lost and you search for them, but there's a hole in your brain where the words used to be. You struggle to breathe. I scribbled these words during 2020's pandemic spring when I realized I had lost the ability to write. Not to physically jot down words, those came in a profusion that tumbled out everywhere like raindrops. The issue for me as we moved into summer was not being able to focus and write something coherent. When autumn came with a second surge of anguish, I dared to whisper a word that was new to me: depression. Winter promised to be worse, until one day my fog-addled brain was rescued by something unexpected, a compound known to chemists as ketamine hydrochloride, also called ketamine, special K or just K. The substance took me on a psychedelic journey into the shadow architecture of my mind, exposing those parts made tender by trauma and by a spiky virus that stole so many lives, brains, lungs, and words. As a science writer and a skeptic, I have long dismissed claims of miracle cures, but if my experience with ketamine is any indication, empirical truth is all relative when a breakthrough helps rescue a non-believer like me from a slow slide into oblivion. This isn't a story about ketamine hydrochloride, not fundamentally. It's about what happens when a writer loses his power to assemble words. For eons, artists have complained about the capriciousness of creativity, how a muse or a spark can appear or disappear in a flash. At times, I had felt my own creativity ebb and flow, sometimes soaring, sometimes crashing. But over the years, I had learned to soldier on to find the words I needed. Then came COVID. I was hardly alone in feeling like a bottom was falling out as 2020 passed by grimly day after day. That February, before the world fully understood what was happening, a close friend of mine got flu-like symptoms. After spending some time with her, I got the sniffles. This was in New York, where the virus was then spreading, insidious and largely undetected. By March and April, infectious horrors bordering on the medieval had blanketed the globe. Did my friend and I have COVID or just common colds? We will never know. The country had been so unprepared for the onslaught that there were not enough tests until well into the summer. But even if the coronavirus hadn't rudely hijacked my cells, there was plenty to freak out about. People were dying after buying tangerines and granola at the corner deli. Politics was careening out of control. Apocalypse, for a time, seemed to be looming. And then back to the journal. In that dark space between furtive sleep and wakefulness, you start falling, falling, falling. There's nothing there to stop you. Most mornings, after emerging from my tangled sheets, I drank a mug of dark roast coffee, ate a banana, I love bananas, and sat in front of my laptop. I was working on a novel, a biomedical thriller set in the near future about the first human, I named her Rachel, to get extensive neuroimplants that gave her extraordinary and troubling powers. Before COVID, her story had spilled out of me. Now the words slowed to a trickle. My anxiety surged. Was it possible I'd never be able to write again? I've always been a cyclist. That summer I biked everywhere, but as the weeks drag on, I began to struggle with hills. Even small ones made me gasp for air. One day I related my struggles to a doctor friend. "Dude, that sounds like long-haul COVID," he said. That's the way he talks. "It's the breathing that gives it away, that and the brain fog." At the time, these were new terms, long haul, brain fog. To distract myself, I tried to find the right music to listen to, but too much of it reminded me of the before times, of my now grown children when they were small, of dinner parties with friends, of my grandmother, whom I missed terribly since she died in 1993, of writing something that made sense. The free fall continued. Netflix videos, podcasts, novels, they all added to my distress. And they were all a cruel reminder of my inability to complete my book. But who am I to complain? That's what I wrote in my journal. It wasn't lost on me that I was only one among millions afflicted with pandemic mental trauma. In the US alone, depression increased threefold during the first year of the plague, according to a study in the Journal of American Medical Association. This suggested that at least a few of the newly depressed besides me must have been writers, some of whom lost not only their words but their lives. Then, late in the fall, fate intervened. In a social setting, I met a psychiatrist named Phil Wilson. We discussed the mental toll of the pandemic, and I shared part of my story. He became concerned and asked how much I knew about ketamine. I said not much. I had seen people sniffing Special K at raves and parties. I also knew that Phil was a key figure in using ketamine to calm patients' nerves and treat depression, and that he co-edited a book called The Ketamine Papers. Phil Wilson is a bear-like man with close-cropped white hair and lively, if world-weary eyes. A Buddhist and a dynamo at age 78, Phil runs the Ketamine Research Foundation, a nonprofit that conducts research and trains caregivers in ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, KAP, a blending of talk therapy and K. He also was principal investigator in a clinical trial sponsored by the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies called MAPS, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. The study's findings showed that MDMA, ecstasy, can help calm people traumatized by severe mental illness. Unlike MDMA, LSD, psilocybin, and most other psychedelics, ketamine has remained legal as an FDA-approved anesthetic used off-label as a psychedelic. For some people, K doesn't work at all, but for many it disperses the fog after a single dose. This soon wears off, requiring multiple sessions, but eventually some patients end up with sustained relief. After some hesitation, I accepted Phil's invitation to try KAP. I had never tried psychedelics before, my reluctance coming from a lifetime of having an overactive imagination that I had worked hard to rein in, not to enhance. As I told him, I liked my brain the way it was and didn't want to risk breaking it. Of course, that was before it broke. And back to the journal. I was on fire, a soothing, cool flame that felt real. I arrived at Wolfson's office in downtown San Anselmo, California, on a cool, foggy day on Christmas Eve 2020, as the world reeled from yet another coronavirus wave. The session began with an hour of shrink talk about brain fog, family travails, and words stolen. Wolfson then handed me a blackout mask and headphones. Music, he said, would be a critical part of my journey, which would last for about an hour. Wolfson pulled out a syringe and injected 130 milligrams of ketamine into my arm. Then he surprised me by taking out a set of Tibetan bells and chanting an invocation about my intentions for this journey. Remember, he's a Buddhist. To find peace with anxieties, plagues, and the apocalypse, and to recover my lost words. A minute later, the medicine hit me, propelling me forward in a fast, sinewy surge. I soared through swirls of colors and shapes like spinning pinwheels of matter. At first, the swells seemed to be made of water, then of stars that rushed and churned in outer space. I saw faces of people in my life pop up, floating in the swirls, my kids, parents, brother, lovers, friends. Abruptly, the pinwheel stopped, and I was sitting in a placid scene from my boyhood, my grandmother's dining room in Kansas City, where I grew up. It was our annual Christmas feast with my grandparents and my family. We're all sitting at the table, loaded with turkey, sweet potatoes, and cranberry sauce. Faces I had just seen in the swirly waves appeared at the table. No one spoke, but my grandmother welcomed them all with a nod. A moment later, I found myself in a dark, empty place where colors and emotions stopped, and all was still. In the distance, I saw a woman approaching. At first, her face was obscured. Then I knew exactly who she was. This was Rachel, the protagonist in my unfinished novel. She stopped and stood right in front of me, her eyes telling me that I needed to finish her story. Then Rachel took my hands in hers. Looking directly at me, she said, "You're going to be all right." Back to the journal. The fog is gone, mostly. That night, Christmas Eve, my words returned. The fog had lifted. My mind was crisp and clear. It still makes me a little bit emotional. My response was to weep with joy. The clarity didn't last. One big dose offered a quick fix, but faded a few days later over the next 2 or 3 months. Over the next 2 or 3 months, my clarity came and went as I took ketamine every few weeks, mainly lower dose lozenges at home with Wolfson monitoring. Mostly these experiences were serene. Typically, I was floating over a river or in outer space. A year and a half since my first journey, the clarity continues. This was written a year ago, mostly. But I don't want to oversell this. As a science writer, I know that one patient's response to a medicine might be radically different from another's. But I can't deny that my words are back. I finally completed that long overdue nonfiction book. Rachel's story is also finished. Last night, I slipped ketamine under my tongue after finishing a draft of this essay. As the lozenges took effect in the darkness behind my blackout mask, I saw a gentle replay of my first big journey, with the swirls of colors and energy. The swirls were majestic this time, and unhurried and easy, as they slowly coalesced into a face. It was my grandmother's, and she was smiling.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing.
Thank
This
you.
was just extraordinary. I mean, David is such a creative writer. I always think about David as the experimental man because soon after the genome was sequenced, you were a political writer. And then you went into, covering the genome, and then you became an experimental man, doing all kinds of experiments on you, and have written, as I said, 12 books and so many articles. So words are your thing. and creativity is your thing, and to lose that is like losing a piece of you.
It really was. I
Right?
mean, it was like something, like my leg had been chopped off or
Leg had
worse.
been chopped off or
And,
worse.
you
Yes.
know, I go back to that video of, of the brain.
Yeah.
And what was, we're talking about mental health. What was
Yeah.
going on in that brain? And
Yes.
how did it shift? And, as an experimental man, I want to go back and scan it
Scan it
again and
again.
see how it's changed.
Yes,
'Cause that
exactly.
was several years ago. Yeah.
that was several years ago. But I am so glad, personally, Cure is really glad because, you are here as a resident, here at Cure.
Right.
And working as a creative director for us, putting together, all kinds of things, events like this for us, but also helping us with some of our words. So we're grateful that you have your words back. And David, as a friend and a colleague, I'm also so glad that you found your words back.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Thanks,
sharing your
Seema. I
story.
really appreciate it.
Okay, so we are now going to go on a journey. Let me explain. So what we're going to do is actually have a fireside chat with Steven Sokoler. He is the CEO of Journey, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. Come on up, Steven. I'll let you sit on the other side. Thank you so much. Here.
Hello.
So rather than introduce you, I'm going to ask you, so tell us about you and what is the story behind Journey?
All right. Hey, everybody.
Hi.
I feel like everyone's been sitting for a while, so I think you should know we are the opening act before the band comes back on, right?
Exactly. That's right.
Okay. I'm actually quite moved by the other panelists who were speaking and sharing their stories tonight. So that's what's coming up for me. But to answer your question, I started this company Journey in 2015, so 8.5 years ago, with the mission of helping all people live happier, healthier, less stressed lives. So really about democratizing and destigmatizing mental health. I was fortunate enough to find meditation through Buddhism back when I was living in Australia. And it really changed my life. And I thought, if we can bring this practice and other mental health practices to people in a really simple, approachable, secular, science-based way, it could really resonate. And it was that kernel of an idea that led to Journey.
So was it just that idea, or was it a moment, an aha moment, something that inspired you to say, okay, this is not just me meditating for myself, but I want to create this for other people, for all people? What happened that, led you to personally practicing meditation to starting something like Journey?
So I'm sure, I don't know the backgrounds of obviously many of the folks in the room, but for me, I was working in corporate America at the time, and I happened to stumble upon this book, and it had the very profound title of Buddhism for Busy People. And so that really summed up where I was. I was interested, but I was also busy, right? So I started reading this book, and it was about a professional, a father, and he found Buddhism, and it really changed his life. And so for me, it was the meditation part that really spoke to me, and I started to see a shift. And it was something where when I came back home, when I moved back home to New York, and I was interacting with my mother and my brother and my friends, I was like, wow, this practice has really helped me so significantly. I think it could help other people, but not everyone's going to have the space in their life. I was very fortunate to have ended up in that situation in Australia. I was super lucky to have stumbled upon that book. And so I said, well, what if we could bring it to people in a way that meets them where they are, spiritually, financially, emotionally. And so we started back in 2015 by working with organizations. So we go into corporations because, as I'm sure many of you know, we spend quite a lot of our waking hours at work. And that's how we started. And over the years, we've supported big organizations like Walgreens and Amex, and then small but mighty places like the Harlem Children's Zone and the Anti-Defamation League. So really trying to make sure that we're truly democratizing these practices.
So when you work with a corporate, organization like that, what do you help them do? Do you do an organization-wide, enterprise-wide teaching of meditation, and how does that impact, and can you measure whether it impacts people's mental health? In what way does it help, whether it's productivity, whether it's happiness levels? How do you measure that?
Yeah, all the above. So when we go into an organization, we support the entire organization and not just the employees, but also any of their loved ones. And the reason I said it that way is it's not simply dependents, it's anyone that they feel connected to. So it could be a next door neighbor that's really struggling. It could be a boyfriend or girlfriend or a roommate, right? We want to make sure that we can wrap our arms around them so that they can support the people that are important to them. And a few years prior to the pandemic, we recognized, I mean, I think I'm still supposed to lead a guided meditation at this point, right?
Yes.
And one of the things I do when I lead a meditation is I say, how many people have meditated before? People will, you know, put up their hand a little bit. And the good thing is over the years, more people are starting to put up their hands. And how many people have a regular practice and less people put up their hands. And so what we started to learn was, while meditation was great for me, it changed my life, there were other practices that really resonated and spoke with people.
Yep.
Cognitive behavioral therapy, positive psychology, journaling. And so we said, well, why be limited to just one modality when the mission is to help all people and to allow them to find things that speak to them? And so we expanded from meditation into these other practices. We were doing everything on site. Sounds very old school, but it's nice to be back in person again.
Yes.
We then added a lot of digital tools. And now what it looks like is it is a full suite of proactive mental health products. So I can tell you what that looks like if it's interesting.
Yes, I want to ask you about that. But before we get to this new
How do we measure
product,
it?
You want to, how do you measure it?
Yeah, so we do a number of things. So first, employees will self-report on a number of clinically validated, in a clinically validated assessment form. So that allows us to do two things. One is to help the employees to track their own journey and to be able to see how they're doing. And the other, and this is one of those things that, you know, it sounds funny to say, but it allows us to share the results, of course, anonymously and in aggregate with the organization. And the part about that is organizations do want to see that these types of programs are making a difference. And so we're able to parse the data by location or job type or gender so that they can see who might need more support and then allow them to inform their strategy. So we track engagement, we track clinical outcomes, we track member satisfaction, so a whole host of things. But to the original question, all of this leads to what are the business outcomes. And it feels, I have to admit, it feels a little weird talking about business outcomes when we just heard so many amazing speakers pouring their hearts out. So just recognizing that. But they are very interested in, does it reduce turnover? Does it reduce burnout? And we've done clinical studies with Humana, with a neuroscientist at NYU, and a bunch of others to be able to make that case from a scientific standpoint.
You know, since the pandemic, workplace stress is at an all-time high. And I think it's partly, some people love being back to work. Other people do not want to come back to work. So how has things changed? How has the workplace changed since the pandemic?
Well, there's certainly a greater variety of workplaces. Like I think most of us were working in an office in the past or in a retail facility or manufacturing. But now it's much more diverse. So my whole team, we were based in New York, is now fully remote. So many of us haven't met each other. So that has its own set of challenges, and also the fact that we're working from home. So how do you separate work and life in the same way maybe you did in the past? So things like that are a challenge. A lot of companies now are doing hybrid, right? So sometimes we're in the office, sometimes we're not. Where does work end? Where does life begin? And so it creates a whole nother set of challenges for individuals and, of course, organizations to figure out.
So tell us about the product. So what is the suite of products and how do people avail of these products?
Yeah, so the main product is actually relatively new. We launched the product at the start of the year called Journey Proactive EAP. So EAP, for those of you that don't know, is Employee Assistance Program. It is the least sexy digital product you've ever seen. However, it is something that every organization has. And so after years of basically evangelizing mental health and saying, hey, we need you to add these services, it's super important, and companies saying, well, we think this is important, but we don't have the budget or this or that, we said, well, why don't we go to where they're already spending money? And so we took everything we knew about driving really high engagement and having great clinical outcomes and put it basically in a package that made it easy for them to buy. So this product includes all of the subclinical work that we were doing before, all the meditation, cognitive behavioral therapy, et cetera, and combines it with all of the clinical support. So it is the full spectrum of mental health.
So if there are people who are still not used to meditation, are there other ways for people to kind of calm themselves down or get away from the stresses or reduce anxiety?
Absolutely. I think art is fantastic. Being with nature is something. Spending time with others, right? Not only the loneliness epidemic, but I think we see it. We and younger generations are spending more time on their phones than we did in the past. So there's quite a lot of things that we can do aside from meditation. Prayer is another one that resonates with many people. So ways to either look inward or expand, look at nature. Where's David? Psychedelics are a thing that people seem to. Where is it?
Wrong, David's over there.
Yeah, so yes, there's lots of, and that was the reason why we expanded from meditation, because we said, let's allow people to find things that really speak to them.
Yeah, there's gardening, for example. That's very, you sort of kind of zone in and you're doing something that you forget everything, So I'm glad that we're defining this sort of thing in a broader way. One more thing I'll mention, and then you want to take us into a meditation exercise now before we bring Nick on, or at the end?
You're the boss. You tell me.
Okay. All right. So first of all, before we go into this, I wanted to also say food is another form of, soothing the soul, so to speak, and soothing the stomach. And I just want to recognize Chef Mike over there. Chef, we are so fortunate to have somebody here who is a Culinary Institute of America trained chef who is really, heads up all of the culinary stuff that we put out in our cafeteria. It's called, I don't want to call it cafeteria because it's still much more than that. It's a Cure Kitchen, and it's called NaCl, salt. And, we're focused on very healthy foods. And tonight, Chef has prepared some really incredible creations. So when we're done in the evening or throughout the evening, please go and enjoy that. And I think we have used really fresh ingredients, organic ingredients, mood-boosting ingredients to make tonight's food also resonate with the theme. So thank you, Chef. Really appreciate it. Okay, so
My
you
turn?
want to do it? Yeah, your
Sure.
turn. Okay.
You guys ready?
Yep.
All right. I'm going to skip the part where I ask people to raise their hands and see who has and has not meditated. But I'm going to assume that some of you have, but perhaps not everyone has. So if this is your first time or you haven't done this practice before, we're going to meditate. I'm going to lead you in a guided meditation for the next 45 minutes. No, I'm just kidding. It'll be like three or 4 minutes.
You just raised my anxiety level.
It was a test. It was a test. No, we'll just sit together for a few minutes. So if you can put your feet on the floor, put your hands on your legs or on your lap. And if it's comfortable for you, you can close your eyes or gently gaze down. And we're going to start this meditation by setting an intention. One word representing something you want to bring more of into your life. Could be love, balance, creativity, space. Think of a word now. And when you have that, let's take a big, deep breath in through the nose. Silently repeat your intention and breathe out. Again, in, intention, and out. And one more time, in, intention, and out. Now we're going to move our awareness into our bodies. So feel your feet as they rest on the floor. Feel your back as it rests on the chair. And feel your hands as they rest on your legs. And now we're going to scan through the body, simply bringing awareness to each part. No need to change anything, simply noticing. So let's start at the top of the head. Bring your awareness to your forehead, gently moving down to your eyes. Simply notice to your nose, cheeks, mouth, moving down to your neck, your shoulders, your upper arms, your biceps, your triceps, moving down to your elbows, your forearms, and then your hands. Now let's bring our awareness to our chest. Again, simply noticing, moving down to the stomach, moving down to the legs. Start with the hips, move down to the upper legs, to your knees, to your lower legs, and to your feet. And now let's bring our awareness to our breath. So simply notice, simply pay attention as you breathe in and out. You might notice your breath around your nose, or in your chest, or in your stomach. Just simply notice the breath as it moves. Bring your awareness to each inhale and each exhale, very gently, just as it is. And as we start to bring this practice to a close, return to your intention, the word you said at the beginning, representing something you want to bring more of into your life. And we're going to repeat the same exercise. So let's all take a big deep breath in through the nose, repeat your intention, and breathe out. Again, in, intention, and out. And one final time, in, intention, and out. And now take a moment to recognize and appreciate that the practice you just did here today benefits both you and those around you. And when you're ready, in your own time, you can gently open your eyes. I would invite you to take notice of how you feel. Don't judge as good, bad, just notice. I didn't give many of the prompts that I normally do before the sit, but meditation is really not as much a practice to calm down, although that is how we've packaged it, as much as it is to bring greater awareness, to become more familiar. So regardless of what your subjective experience was, it's really about bringing more awareness to that, to the body, to the breath, to whatever you're working with. So thank you guys. Thanks for going through that.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, we've heard about the EAP, just in the regular way, but this sounds like a really expanded way of thinking about EAP, and want to have you also back again, to talk a little bit more about it and how we could do more of this and create, a more calmer environment for ourselves in our workplace. So thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Okay, so is everybody ready for some music? So we're going to have back on stage Nick Howard, and he is going to close us out for the night. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're looking forward to listening to more.
I've never followed a meditation before, so I'm glad that some people are still awake here with us. We're loving everybody up again. I think this lapel mic might be on. We need to kill that one here real quick. I just want to thank you again for having me. This has been such an inspiring event. It's absolutely wonderful, and I've been so inspired by everybody that's got up and spoken. And we're going to just close out with a song of mine. It's called Unbreakable, and it feels quite fitting for the subjects we've discussed today and the topics. This is a song that was very much inspired by this city, New York, which I was living here during Hurricane Sandy, looking out the window. I was trying to write this song. This is a song that I performed on The Voice. You can do an original. And I was New Yorkers have an amazing ability. They seem very hard on the outside, but actually they're very kind people. And you see that when there's events that have happened in the city over its history, people really look out for each other. And I was inspired, and I was trying to think of a word that would embody that spirit, and this idea of unbreakable came to mind. Picking yourself up off the ground when you get knocked down, which happens to all of us, and you have to do that not once in life, but quite often. And so this is a song that I reminded to myself that even when things are difficult, if you get up and keep on going, you don't know what's around the corner. And just thank you again for listening, and thank you again to Rebecca for joining me this evening as well. Standing on a ledge, see the past before me. Pick out all the bruises one by one. Feel a little cold, but there's warm there somewhere, but not where you come from. Staring at my face in a broken mirror. Pick up all the pieces and make them one. You might be strong, but you'll never hurt me. There's nothing stronger than love. Kick me down, break my skin. Call me names, call me anything. Come on, try your best to hurt me. You'll never see me suffering, 'cause I'm unbreakable. Stronger than I've ever known. I'm unbreakable. You're never gonna bring me down, down, down. 'Cause life is like a puzzle spread out on the table. Maybe I'm the piece that will never quite fit. Say what you want, but you'll never faze me, 'cause I quite like me like this. Kick me down, scrape my skin. Call me names, you'll never win. 'Cause sticks and stones can never cut through my thick skin. 'Cause I'm unbreakable, stronger than I've ever known. I'm unbreakable, never gonna bring me down, down, down. You'll never change me. I'm standing on a higher ground. I'm unbreakable, never gonna bring me down, down. I see a light in the tunnel and it fades you out. Oh, the angel on my shoulder's gonna shut you down and fight every battle till you go away. But I will never break. I am not a victim and you can't hurt me. Here I stand with my head held high. I'm turn this into MetLife Stadium real quick, okay? Get your hands ready. I'm unbreakable. I'm stronger than I've ever known, 'cause I am unbreakable. Never gonna bring me down, 'cause I'm unbreakable. Oh, yeah. Well, I'm unbreakable. Never gonna bring me down, down, down. You'll never of town. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you,
Thank
thank
you
you,
so much
thank you,
again.
thank you. My God, what an evening, huh? What an evening. And, you know, as I mentioned at the top, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And, you know, we're ending May, but mental health awareness should not end. And so as we approach the end of May, I want to make sure that, you know, we remember that mental health is just as important as physical health. It's about the whole health. It's about the body, but also the mind. And I want to thank everybody who just made today's evening very special. David Nathan, Nick Howard, Ala Landa, George Petit, David Duncan, Stephen Sokolar, and, you know, Jeff Spar. Where's Jeff? Hi, Jeff, who has just drawn this wonderful mural. And thank you again, Jeff. And I also want to thank the Cure team, everybody who's here, the AV team, the business solutions team, the video team, David, Lauren, Caroline, the events team, Jamila, Taylor, everybody who has put their heart and soul into this, and they bring every part of their fiber and their being to work every day. And that's what makes Cure so special, because it's not just the wonderful labs where there's incredible science going on and this wonderful facility that is beautiful, but it's all the people who are in this facility who are working day and night to make the world a better place, to advance healthcare, and, you know, bring true our mission, which is Cure, period. And that's why there is a period after our logo, Cure. So thank you all for a wonderful evening. And there is food here, Chef's Creation still here, and some wine. So enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.